I am here with my dear friend and colleague, Mario Eraso from Miami, Florida. How are you, Mario?
Good. Thank you, Laura. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you here. For those of you who may be new to my Heart to Heart, I'm Laura Hart. I'm the CEO and founder of RoboFund. We are a company located on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, where we run programs for children, afternoon, sometimes evening, sometimes weekend, during the day. And our goal is to help children love to learn by making things using leading edge technologies, such as making things using with robotics, or making things using other types of manipulative tools. And I'm going to pull one thing that I'm working on right now. Hold on. That I really like, which is called the Finch, from a company called Bird Brain Technologies. And Tom came on a couple weeks ago. This is really a cool tool for teaching kids about mathematics, thinking. Anyway, that's what we do. So we have classes, camps, birthday parties, private lessons. We have a lot of things coming up in the next 2 months. For instance, we have Vacation Day next Tuesday for Election Day, November 8th, and then Veterans Day, November 11th. So if you're in the New York City area and you have a child between the ages of 3 and 13, we have opportunities for you. We have a 3-hour program in the morning, a 3-hour program in the afternoon, and the kids can stay for lunch. And we do robotics, coding, and Minecraft and circuitry classes. And for the little ones, we don't quite get them into coding, but we do a lot of what we call pre-robotics and little engineers programs. So check us out at robofund.org, and we would love to see your child. And we do have opportunities for you to try us out. So check us out on the website or call us at 212-245-0444. Mario and I have met through a mutual mathematics friend. Thank you, Irina. And Mario does a similar thing to what I do at Zero Limit Learning. Mario has a PhD in mathematics education with an emphasis in STEM, and was a very, very gutsy and bold person to start a company about 18 months ago in Miami in STEM. And so I like to talk to Mario at least once a year or more, like, how is it going? What are you up to? So tell us, how is it going? And what are you up to?
Yeah, so it's been bumpy. I have never been an entrepreneur. And so for the last 18 months, I've been able to survive. And
that alone, believe me, that is a high bar. In these 18, in any 18 months, but especially these.
Right, with the pandemic, right?
Yep.
So at the beginning, it was very difficult to market myself and to offer the services to the different people that I knew needed and had the interest in STEM learning. Yep. But making the connection was tough. But I love it. I enjoy developing material for whatever need arises.
So tell me about what activities, what are you doing? I remember the beginning of my business, I had one job in Paterson, New Jersey. That $200,000 contract lasted for a couple of years, and that was 25 years ago, where 200,000 was a bit more than it is today. But the beginning, you get these contracts, and then it's a very interesting time. So you had mentioned 2 fascinating projects that you're involved with. Do you want to talk about them?
Yeah, so the biggest 2 projects that I have right now, one is 100 students, and they are in a public school, and the other one is 150 students in a private school. And so 2 contrasting populations, located.
So one relatively underserved population.
Correct.
So, okay. And one probably very resourced environment in the private.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And that one is a middle school
Hmm.
where there are 50 sixth graders, 50 seventh, and also eighth graders 50. So the interesting part is that they understand this new need in society for the digital literacies. That in addition to reading and writing and math, we believe that this is needed because it's unavoidable now with the computer and the math. They understand that, and so they want their children to be literate in these domains, and they are so varied, which is also challenging. The robotics, the coding, programming more formally, 3D printing, HTML, web development. And so they want that during the school day.
Okay. So you run sort of a 1 day a week push in for the kids?
Correct. So I go and I push in their science class that meets 5 times a week,
Hmm.
like a normal school, but then they have allowed me to go one of those science classes in the week. I go and I do the STEM curriculum.
And are you enjoying it?
Yes, the key. So this is the second semester that I'm doing it. So the
That makes it a little easier because you probably developed materials.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And so developing is something that I love because to me it's artistic, it's risky. You don't know how the students are going to react, or
Yep.
you think it's relevant, you think it's interesting, but they are the ones who let you know
And
if
what I always find ironic is when I was a full-time computer teacher, I'd have a great class and I go, yes, that was fantastic. What I created for the kids, they liked it. Then the next group, the same age, it just went nowhere. I'm like, what is going on here? It's not, so that kids are different throughout.
yes. Yes, and so in that school of three grade
Hmm.
levels, 50 each, it's actually three uh, times three. So I have 9 different classes, and the three sixth graders react
Right.
differently.
Yep.
And in the other school, I have 100 students, and I have 16 groups, and the number varies between 5 and 7. Now in there it's not STEM, it's a geometry intervention for 10th graders.
Okay, so we're
And
moving
so
from a resourced school to an under-resourced school where a number of ninth graders did not pass geometry. Is that right? Okay.
right, so we do an intervention there so that they um, catch up with the algebra, because that exam already is letting the administrators know that they're not doing well, that they need help, because for the end of course geometry class, there's a test, the end of course test. It's predicted that they are not going to do well. So I have this intervention with 16 classes, and they're all 10th graders. But depending on what 6 or 7 students I have, then the same material, they react
Right.
differently. And this is something that the teachers know, but the school district assumes that we all have to go at the same pace following the curriculum of the
Right.
district.
Right. And teachers know that it
Uh,
doesn't quite work that way.
right.
So when we prepped for this, you talked about your 3 goals for your work in both schools. And you also talked about what you're noticing in terms of frustration tolerance. Do you want to start by telling us about your goals?
Yes. So my goals are three goals that I repeat and repeat over and over to the students, make it clear. Um, and the first one is kind of obvious. It's the cognitive goal, which is you need to learn this mathematical content. And that is pretty much it, the
Hmm.
content. Then I have the affective goal, which is that the students need to develop effectively because they have a lot of issues with, let's say, a common one, anxiety towards the
Hmm.
subject, or lack of
Hmm.
confidence, or no prior knowledge because, let's say, now during the pandemic, they missed a lot of content, so they feel insecure, or they have many other problems that sometimes correlate with the fact that they are an underserved population educationally. So there are things that accumulate because of that. For example, they don't have um, the resources or the encouragement by family members to do certain things or to be explained to them in different ways.
Hmm.
So that creates a lot of things in addition to the basic ones, right? Did you have breakfast? Did you go to bed
Right.
early? So we work on, um, for example, the last activity that I did with them, there's a bulletin board about 9 habits, and they read each of the habits and they present and say how those habits um, relate to them when they are in school. And it can be for any subject. So, for example, are you proactive? Are you a good team member? There's one about do you take care of
Right.
yourself? Um,
So it sounds
and do you
right.
study?
It sounds like you're in a situation where you're solving the little problem, which isn't a little problem, of getting them to pass a geometry test, but you're finding these children who are coming to you or young adults are in not overall emotionally, psychologically, have been really been battered by a lot, specifically the pandemic and a loss of learning. Is that correct?
Correct. And so it is a high. It's an overload. They have a lot going on, and the counselors and the social workers may not be able to help them like a psychologist would. So the counselors in the school may be advising for academic planning and fulfilling requirements to go to college and things like that. But how to handle your emotions? Well, we know that even prior to the pandemic, there was uh, SEL, socio emotional
Yep.
learning
Yep. Yep.
strategies. And so there are books, there are workshops for the teachers to know about this, be aware, and to suggest to the students what to do, like mindfulness, breathing, different things that have been there. But right now they're overwhelmed.
Right.
So they need to work on that as a parallel goal. And the third one is that in order to communicate, whether it is the technical aspects of the content or express yourself in the affective domain, you need certain language that really lets you know specifically what the discussion is
Right. So you're
about.
not
So
talking
in
about
geometry,
that point over there in math, but you're using the word vertices or uh, the jargon of the
yes,
field that you're learning.
exactly. And there are words like in geometry, similar has a particular
Hmm.
definition, and it has to do with proportionality, it doesn't mean that the two objects are similar because they look
Right.
alike. They are exactly the same object, but in a different proportion. In the same proportion, but different size. So it's like zooming in and zooming
Yep.
out.
Yep.
And so you create a sentence or two with these technical, not only the vocabulary, but there's ways of speaking the scientific or the mathematical language. I was tutoring a girl recently, and they were talking about temperature and that the change was -2. So let's say 80 degrees and the change was -2. So now it's 78 degrees. And they were asking, what's the final temperature? Well, she doesn't understand the technical language that the change is -2. So you have to say it in another way. For example, the temperature is 80 degrees and the temperature went down 2 degrees. Mm-hmm. So you don't talk about change. You just say the temperature went down. Right. You don't talk about negative. And so the way you structure the language in science and in math is problematic, and the language has to be developed and supported to get there, especially in geometry.
It's a little like code switching. It is code switching.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. It is.
So tell us about some of your successes. I mean, it sounds as though in both situations, it's quite a hard schedule. It's just once a week. And having been a teacher, I was able to get my school to change the schedule so that instead of working with the kids once a week, I was working with them for a third of the year, 3 times a week. And I believe that is a much easier and more effective way to do deep learning, but you don't have that flexibility. So tell us about some of your successes in both of these schools.
Yeah, so let's say in the one that I'm doing STEM.
The resource school, yep.
The resource school, they have the resources, they may have good opportunities or good teachers, but sometimes the content and the methodology, especially the content, is driving their education, their learning. And so you require, even if you have the resources, you require someone to work on creativity. Right. You ask a child, open problem, create this, and they can get stuck if they are not familiar with creating. And so I was aware of that, and I waited enough, and I could have said, okay, I'm going to start something else. They're not doing it, or I'm going to combine this with someone else. But I waited, and it was not only one thing, it was several things that I waited for that were kind of happening simultaneously, but all around developing their creativity. And one day it just happened, spontaneously, like that, really organic, biological. Well, obviously you're dealing with a brain, right? Biological structures, and it's spontaneous. It's different levels of creativity, but I waited long enough that I started to see them being creative and producing, rather than being the consumers of technology. They become the producers of technology.
From the point of view of having been a teacher and teaching my staff, and having been around kids a long time, that's a very nerve-wracking moment when you wait. And it's a very important moment because, and I would guess after the pandemic that learning hasn't been able to be open enough for people to say, here's an idea, what can you do with it? Or I've taught you this, now where can we go? Mitchell Resnick from MIT, who is one of the prime developers of Scratch, has this line: would you rather have your kids play a video game or make a video game? So it's the same
Mhm.
type of thing that you're talking about, the producers
Exactly.
versus the
Same.
creators.
Yes.
So tell us when you were able to flip that switch and they realized that they're more in the driver's seat, what changed?
So the participation, the engagement, when they are told what to do, when there's a script, when the teacher needs to cover the material and go to the next one in the sequence, they are, it's teacher centered, and they may just be trying to understand you or get to where you are. So that means that they are more passive. So the short answer is the engagement increases.
Right.
They are hooked because their creation now is being seen and shared, even globally. In
Yep.
Scratch, you go and
Yep.
share globally, and at least in the classroom, you're like, look what I'm doing, and oh, that's so nice. Let me share this with someone else because they're doing something similar, or what if you do this and that, and so now they are invested in their product and they want to ask you, so they participate, they engage tremendously
Yep.
more if they are creating.
So tell us about something they're creating, or what's, I mean, obviously it's not
Yeah,
everyone creating the same thing, but what's a project that you're
right.
very proud of that you've done?
Yes. So I started with isometric paper. So the idea was within Tinkercad, which is a software for 3D
Yep.
printing, to design 3D. Um, to get them there, I started with isometric paper, which dot paper, which is not the squares like the graph paper. These are, um, instead of having a square, you have a rhombus.
Okay.
So the angles are different, and that gives you a perspective view of the 3D object that you are going to draw. And so you have these dots arranged like that, and you connect them in a certain way to create a 3D diagram. So I started like that with a cube, with a stack of cubes, and then I moved from there to the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, nctm.org. They have in their illuminations section, they have this digital environment where you go and you just do exactly that, which you can do on paper. And you can drag and rotate, and you see the three-dimensionality of what you produce. So you have squares, segments, and dots. And then you create with those cubes. And you can rotate them or you can project them onto a plane. And so what I told everyone was, okay, you need 50 cubes. You need to create something that has a hole. You need to use 3 colors, and then you must have cubes, squares, and dots, and from one vertex to another, you must connect, like say a cable stayed bridge, that you have these strings, cables connecting to a point. So they one of them produced a castle with a door that was lowered to the ground.
Wow.
Yeah, and another one, well, actually 3 of them, they created um, square, the SpongeBob, the square,
SpongeBob SquarePants.
and the friends.
Okay.
So now they look very very cubical, like
Right.
Minecraft
Right. Right. Right.
objects, and they created them. And so we went to Google and we searched the three friends and we took a picture, and then we took a picture of the three screens, and having both next to each other, uh, they created them identically.
So you really unleashed them being in charge of what they were doing.
Yes, yeah. As long as they would satisfy
Right.
with comply with the requirements.
Right. But I often think creativity in any field is enhanced by having criteria that you have to use.
Mhm.
I mean, if you can do anything in the
Yeah.
world, it's a little too much. You need sort of
Yeah.
guardrails. So,
Yes.
so the next time you come on, we'll have to see some of these projects. So that would be really fun.
Sure. I have pictures.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So that's a more optimistic place, it sounds like. But you still, then your other project, which I think we're running out of time, so we're going to hold off on that one. But one of the things that I think would be really nice to talk about for a few minutes is frustration tolerance and how you're seeing that in both environments. And how you would compare that to 3 or 4 years ago, and if you've come up with any techniques for helping other teachers and parents deal with we're all a little frazzled. I think our whole world has changed in so many ways since the pandemic, and we're all like slightly off kilter, it feels like.
Yes. So I have looked at this intensely and over time, and I kind of see a mechanism that creates the low tolerance.
Okay, so
The low frustration.
before you go any further, you and I know what we're talking about with frustration tolerance. Do you want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So when you're learning, there's cognition mechanisms inside your brain that you are kind of putting things together and making sense, and maybe storing them or maybe relating them to something prior knowledge. And that's called cognitive dissonance. And when you come to making sense of what's presented to you, that's when you learn. And so that takes time, and it takes also that you teach at their level, which for many years we've known about the zone of proximal development. You cannot be too high, because then you disconnect, and if it's too low, it's too easy, they disconnect
Right.
too.
So the zone of proximal development, in simple terms, would be teaching at the right level so kids aren't overwhelmed and frustrated and they're not bored.
Exactly. Okay. And so if the, let's say, the school district is pushing a curriculum and pushing the teachers, and they're going, and that's their goal, and the students don't have that because they missed content, so there's the mechanism, right? You're not ready, the other side is pushing something. It doesn't matter that they missed 6 months of learning, they're pushing that material. So there you go, the recipe for disaster. And then if the students don't have a way to express that, if they are not developed effectively to express and to demand other ways, then they have to wait more than normally to do these connections, and waiting more, or if it's more strenuous, then you're going to get frustrated. If it's too high, or if it's taking too long, they will get frustrated. Plus, we all know that the attention span has been reduced by half in the last, I don't know, 15 years.
Wow.
Right? Mm-hmm. So if you add that to the mix, then obviously they're going to be anxious. And obviously, they're not going to have confidence in what they can produce within those
Parameter. Yeah.
conditions. So if you keep pushing, it breaks. And the school district doesn't stop. Some teachers don't stop. They are asked to be following the pacing guide of the district.
Mhm.
So I have that goal. I set aside time to do these things, like talk about these habits, and when they talk in this environment, they are friendlier, they're more open, they think right. They
So when
you
you acknowledge the reality and you give them a chance to speak about their reality, when you then move over to working on the work that you've been hired to do, they're more engaged and more interested because they feel like they trust you.
exactly. And so yeah, the safe space and trusting the teacher, you have to develop that that you have to earn the trust of the
Right,
students.
right, right.
So yeah, sometimes speaking logically about a problem in your life and what happened first, and you shared with your mom, but then your dad came, and there's a sequence of events that you may be sharing. Well, that's exactly what you need when you're programming.
It's true. Yep. Yep. Yeah, you actually made me think of a really fun project for kids, which would be kind of like Mad Libs, to take a story and to divide it into the 10 steps, to give them all the 10 steps in the wrong order, or on little pieces of paper and have them have to put it in the right order.
Yes,
It's a lot like solving a proof in math or writing procedures in programming. So,
exactly.
yeah. Well, it seems like your kids are very lucky to have you. So,
Thank you.
so what do you see on the horizon for the next year to 2 years in running your company?
So I need to learn marketing, and I am going to devote some time to having the website running well, the LinkedIn,
Yep.
Instagram. I need to do that, and then how to connect to other networks,
Right.
because I knew that people had the need, and it took an enormous amount of time and effort to get called, and people are looking for those who can teach STEM.
It's a little bit like the Lego blocks connecting. You're one block here and they're one block here. And how do you get them to know what you're doing?
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna devote a lot of time to the marketing and doing this digitally, doing marketing digitally and in an organic way.
Right.
I,
Right.
I know that LinkedIn has worked for me in the last year.
Hmm.
I think it's gotten more effective. LinkedIn, that is.
Well, as a math data person, you can certainly create a set of metrics to follow that. But a book that I read early on in growing my company that was really helpful is The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And a lot of people mention this. And it's very helpful because what you're really going from is being a practitioner to owning a company. And those are different sets of skills.
Mhm.
I can already tell you're a great teacher, but how do you go from being a great teacher to being somebody who can run a thriving business, which, you've already proven yourself that you've stayed alive for 18 months. And now, okay, how do I stay alive and grow and not be the one, with all the pots at the stove that are 16 different places that I have to be at once? How do I, you're in it for the long run. You're in a marathon. You're not in a sprint. So, And I have so enjoyed watching and getting to know you, and to also have you share with our audience your struggles. But I think you need to come. We need to set this up for a month or two from now and hear about your geometry and your underserved environment, because those are different challenges. And
Thank
my,
you.
it would be a good conversation. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank
And
you, Laura.
I look forward to talking with you again and seeing where you are. We'll check in a couple months. So thank you.
Okay. No, thank you for having me here.
Sure. It's my pleasure.